Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Cosmic Currents, a podcast about surfing, spirits, and stories. If we haven't met yet, hi, I'm Leah. I'm an empowerment mentor, and I'm based out of a small surf town in northern Peru. Okay, so wow, now that I just stopped to sit here and talk into the mic, it feels like the past couple of weeks have been pretty significant for me. And even though nothing has really happened, like there haven't been any major events or changes in my outer world, really feels like my inner world is like shifting and rearranging. And I don't know, has that felt true for you? I mean, we all live under the same stars and on the same planet, and so I think that we do get tapped into this energy and we all experience it differently. But yeah, essentially, I think it's really common that we can experience, yeah, just like that, a similar essence or a similar energy, and we all kind of process it or digest it a little differently. You know, this year I really pushed myself or told myself that I was going to live as true to myself, to my core values, to my desires as best as I know how. And I am really learning how uncomfortable that process is. And honestly, it should be, because when we settle, we do it because it's easy and it's comfortable. And even though, there's something about that decision we make that might not feel quite right, like if we can kind of predict the outcome that we're going to experience from whatever decision, whatever it is we're settling for or settling in, there's a feeling of safety that can make us feel like we're doing something right. And last or 2 weeks ago, I talked about compromising, and it's kind of that similar energy, right? Like when we compromise, we betray ourselves just a little bit. We do this little by little over time. And it's really easy to settle for a bunch of little things in life that at the time they seem pretty insignificant or unimportant, until one day you wake up and you realize this just isn't it. This just doesn't feel like me. This just isn't what I want. And it's like, how did I even get here? So, going back to this inner shifting and rearranging that I'm feeling, and this commitment that I made to myself at the start of the year, and woof, let me tell you, it has ebbed and flows in ways I was not expecting. Honestly, this year, like by April, I felt like I'd already lived a year's worth of time. And, you know, the year did start out with a lot of things, big events, changes, initiations, and then it started to slow down. And this is when the integration started happening. And integration is a process. The word process, I've been using it so much this week, but integration is the processing, the digesting, and also the mixing of what was and what is. And it's a time where we can decide what we keep, what we toss, and what we put aside for another day, because that's also an option. Like, we don't always have to make these rash decisions, and we can observe something and say, like, I see you and I'm going to deal with you. I'm going to process you. I'm going to dig into that, but like not right now. That's also okay. And I feel like we also don't get that permission nearly enough. So, if we don't integrate transformative experiences, and transformative experiences can be something that you did on purpose, like a retreat, a ceremony, could also be a conversation, it could be a trip, it could be a breakup. We can't fully absorb the lessons we were meant to learn or even really appreciate the experience for what it was if we're just like on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. It's like, when you're traveling and you're just like from one place to the next and you barely even have time to like take it all in. And so, yeah, last week was a little dark and shadowy, and it felt like old wounds were being brushed up against, and that really hurt. And it tells me that what I've been doing in the past to heal those wasn't quite working, or I wasn't kind of as healed as I thought I might have been. And that's okay. Like, that's okay, because then the true healing can actually happen. And what I've been finding lately is that I've started to develop this I don't want to say better, but this more enhanced self-awareness that I've I'm starting to recognize bigger themes in my life that my triggers kind of feed on. And this has been with help, okay? Um, but anyway, it's been super helpful. Um, but it can also be a little dark and a little disheartening for a moment, not all the time, but for moments, because it's almost like the more work you do, the more work I do, the more work I realize there is to do. It's like when you start cleaning your house and you're like, okay, yeah, this is clean. And then you realize, like, oh, now that this is clean, this other area looks really dirty. And then you like go and clean that. And then it's like, oh, well, I'll just organize this. And then you start organizing that. Then you clean the shelf, everything you organize. And it's like, just starts unraveling and kind of spiraling. And it kind of like all the assignments are just piling up, and then it can just get to be so much. And what do we do with that? Like when it just we feel like we're doing all of the work, and we have our toe dipped in all of the things, and then it's like, okay, whoa, there's so much I see now. What do we do with it? It's overwhelming, right? And the thing is, we just have to start chipping away. So this is a process I'm going to share that I have been using, and it's been helping me. So I'm going to share. So usually I pick like the biggest thing on my mind. It's the thing that like has been consuming my thoughts. Sometimes it's something intrusive. It's just something I can't shake, or something that's like, oh, this is just feels bad. And I literally sit with it. I go and I roll up my yoga mat and I sit on it, and I sit in front of my altar, which is mostly it's like this little table, and it's mostly covered in seashells. It's got some other things on there too, but anyway, so this process of sitting with it, quote unquote, looks different every single time. I usually start with lighting some Palo Santo, and then I close my eyes and I take some deep breaths, and I do that just to become really present with where I am. And then I start usually by listening. And I just listen I have the idea in my mind, obviously, if it's something that's been consuming my thoughts. Taking breaths usually helps to just bring me into that present moment. And then I just listen. So I have the intention of what I'm sitting with, and I listen. And sometimes my body will just want to start moving right away. And I usually have my eyes closed, and I'll just start moving and stretching, or moving through dynamic stretches, whatever it is. Sometimes it's just like random movement. Sometimes I have almost like a mentoring conversation with myself in my head. Sometimes I need to play music or sing one of my Icaros, one of like my like a medicine song. And yeah, and then I listen, and I receive clarity or awareness or guidance. And it almost feels weird to say, because yeah, like lately I've just been having these really transformative experiences just in my house, sitting on my yoga mat. And a few years ago, I would never have thought this would be possible for me. It's not something I ever really knew existed. I mean, I knew about yoga and I knew about meditation, but I wouldn't even call these. Maybe this is a type of meditation. I don't know, but this practice, I don't know what it's called. But yes, I used to be so. There was just a point a few years ago where I just was completely disconnected from my intuition. I was just so numb. And anyway, so the darkness of last week, I've started to emerge from it, and I realize it's like funny how, like, when things are dark, they're dark, and when they're light, they're light. And it's like forgetting how much something hurt, or forgetting how, when you're sick, you're like, oh, I take for granted what it feels like to be healthy. And we go through these cycles, and And energy is always going to change. Like we pretty much are guaranteed that, that we're never going to be in this like one stable state always. And stable, by stable, I mean like we're never going to always be down. We're never going to always be high. And anyway, so I was almost criticizing myself for just like taking it all so seriously. And it's like sometimes I have this idea that my problems aren't even worth having, or that's like not worth the energy to even process. And that's not true. That's just an intrusive thought. And that is some aspect of myself that wants me to play small, that wants me to be less, that wants me to be like an easier or a low maintenance person, because that's what I've been told I'm supposed to be. I almost said I don't know, but I do know, because I have heard that before. I have heard, like, not in that exact wording, but anyway, yeah, like this part of me that's like, why can't you just be normal? Essentially. And here's the thing. I'm just not interested in that. I'm not interested in mundane. I'm not interested in easy. And I'm not interested in normal. I am interested in magic. I am interested in experiencing the truest essence of life. I'm interested in the mystical part of life that connects us to plants and to animals and to each other at that energetic level. Like, I'm interested in an experience that we can't even comprehend because our minds get filled, or like we can't comprehend it when our minds get filled with these types of thoughts, these low quality thoughts. And our lives become filled with like unaligned people, and our houses are filled with just a bunch of useless stuff. Like, how can we live and experience the truest essence of life if we're surrounded by a bunch of things that are just completely unaligned? And even as I share this, part of me is like, why are you just talking about yourself and your process? And I just think it's important that we process these seemingly little triggers, and if anything, we should do it so that we can live just more free. I've I've started to read this book, Women Who Run with the Wolves. It's quite a popular book. And it's about the wild woman archetype, and I'm just loving it so far. And it reminds me of like being in high school or something, because it's like a bunch of myths and stories. And then she tells the story, and then afterwards she breaks it down and she talks about the symbolism and everything. And I'm like, this is the stuff I used to love. Anyway, so yeah, and I just, because I said it's about, we should process even our smallest triggers so that we can live more free. It reminded me of how this idea, like living wild and free. And I just think those terms are just so misused. And like, doesn't it? Yeah, of course. Doesn't it sound so great to live wild and free? But like, what do those things really mean? And at first thought, and I think the way they're mostly used is like, live like careless and reckless, or in the moment, or free, I don't know, free of what, like free of shoes. No. But like living on the edge or something, like free of fears, maybe, I don't know. But the true meaning of wild and free is something I think we could all aspire to, and it will look different for everyone. So to live wild and free is just simply to live in alignment with our true wild nature, and to live free in our bodies and in our minds. So it means to live in accordance with our intuition. So that's being able to hear our intuition and to feel empowered enough to listen. It means, not dimming our light so that others feel more comfortable, letting die what needs to let die. That is a very wild thing to do. We just basically honor the natural cycles of life in every way. That is part of our wild nature. It's, honoring the parts of you that are scratching at your insides to be let out. And you don't do it because you're afraid of what people might think, say, or do. And it's letting that trapped part of yourself out and doing it all because It's what feels like you, not what you think you should do, what you think you should say, or what you think you should be, or what you think you should look like. Forget about shoulds. It's just coming back to our wild nature and that the freedom to do that. And it might seem almost selfish, right? Like, oh, I should just do what I want and like to hell with the rest. No, actually, that's it. That's not it. And actually, it's not even just all about us, because when we live this way, when we live our truest selves, our most aligned selves, well, one, we are going to be probably better versions, the best versions of ourselves, which is going to positively affect the world around us. And secondly, when we live this way, we tell others that it's okay to do the same. We are able to set an example for the ones who are watching and for younger generations. And I know, like, I can look at the women I grew up around and I can now see the parts of them that were free, and I can see the parts of them that wanted to be. So I think we should all be working towards that. And here's a kicker. Along the way, there will be triggers. So yes, working on our wounds will inevitably ask us to do things we are uncomfortable with, right? We will be tested. We will be put in situations where the easy and seemingly safe choice is not the one that actually brings us the growth and healing that we need. It's actually the uncomfortable, the uncertain choices. Those are the choices where the growth is. And, inevitably we'll end up relearning a lot. So we will be faced with situations, like I said, tests, triggers, and we will have to find a new way to approach them. And we will have to what I mean by relearn is like when I say things like surrender, forgiveness, self-trust. When I say like those are some of the things that I think that I know that we need to relearn. So like when it comes to surrender, a lot of us, our first instinct might be this mean like to think, surrender means to give in, to give up. But it's not. To surrender means to allow things to unfold, to trust, to have faith. I surrender. It's like, it's knowing when you can stop pushing and forcing. And when I always say, there's no such thing as coincidence. That's a surrender statement to me. Like, yeah, I'm gonna I'll leave that one with that one there. Then there's the topic of forgiveness. We think it means to tell someone, I forgive you. It's like handing out a pardon or something. That's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is it's an internal process for yourself where you can release the burden you carry. It's like that saying of like, the one who's holding the fire is the one who gets burned. Like the angry one is the one getting burned, not the other person. So forgiveness is about releasing that burden, releasing that energetic connection, that attachment, the, surrendering, including, to the outcome that like it's letting go of reason. Forgiveness is not rational. It's not about letting someone off the hook. It's not about forgetting. It's not about going back and, being best friends with the person who betrayed you or something. Like it's not about the other person. It's about you. There's so much in these terms. There's so much to talk about, but this is just a little taste. Self-trust. So, a lot of the times we might have to feel like, I think our instinct, our ego says to hold on. It says, if you don't hold this anger, if you soften, you're going to get hurt again, or you're going to make the same mistake. We don't have the self-trust that we will choose differently when something doesn't feel right. And so self-trust can involve experimenting with what happens if we just soften and embrace what it is we're resisting. what if we trust ourselves, love ourselves, value ourselves enough that we trust we will choose differently when something doesn't feel right. So it's not like a self-trust as in like I can do this, like an I can like a false confidence statement. It's not that. So along this process of actually healing, actually managing our triggers, we need to relearn the the processes that weren't working, the processes, I don't know, that we learned in movies or somewhere along the way that, we just assume to know what they mean. But there's a lot. And so, where does that leave us? This is not exactly what I thought we were going to talk about today, but it's okay. I want to add, like, nobody just explained all of this stuff to me at once. This has been a puzzle that I've been putting together for a few years now. I mean, I feel like I've kind of always been this, like, I don't know what the word is, like, um, I've always kind of tried to, like, look beyond and look deeper, look inwards, like this as an introverted, just like very, I don't know, sensitive child growing up and things, like I always felt like I could connect to the not quite so obvious or the unseen, um, which is why I think it was so alarming for me, like the past, um, I don't know, not like the past few years, but the years before that, just what I was feeling or what I was not feeling. It was so anyway. What I mean to say is, yes, nobody explained this all to me. It's just been this thing I've been piecing together. And if it feels really far from where you are now, that's okay. Like reconnecting to yourself and your needs to be done on your own timeline, and the integration of that experience will take the time that it needs. There are things that I know I am still integrating as much as I'm like, I should be like resolved on this by now. Like it takes time. It can take time and it's okay. Like you're only human. I know for me having help along the way has just been really it's just been invaluable, really. Like there's a lot that I am working through and figuring out about myself, about what I want, about this world and the possibility, and um, you know, working with different practitioners along the way always gives me a really good jumping off point, and then I can like process and integrate and do all the things. And I can't believe I'm even gonna say this, but also just cultivating relationships with different allies that guide me along the way. And if I heard myself speak like this, before in the past, apart from past couple of years, like even as I started this, like part of me was like, I don't think you're going to get to that level, where you like feel like the plants are talking to you or something. But I just wouldn't even have known what to make of it. But anyway, help. Mentoring along the way has been really, really helpful. So anyway, yes, that was a bit of a personal share, but maybe you see yourself somewhere in this and you know that there's a part of you that's just like dying to be exposed, or that you're dying to like release, or I don't know what it is for you, but whatever it is that wants to come to the surface, we are here for it. In December, I will be hosting a workshop that is going to take us through a guided reflection of the past year. I ran this workshop in my Reconnect membership group, or mentorship group last year, and it was really powerful. So it's going to be upgraded, and I'm going to share it again. And I wish that I had been reflecting like this in this way over, other than just last year, but here we are. Because too often I think we just like jump right into thinking about like, what do we want? Let's look forward, like, or what do we want to quit? Like we just quickly judge. We're just like, this is good, this is bad, onwards and upwards or whatever. And I think it's incredibly valuable to look back And you can do this more often than every 12 months, whatever it is. But it's, I think, really, really valuable to look back and take some time to understand and reflect on what happened, what you wanted, what didn't happen, what needs to be released, what needs to be forgiven, and so much more. I'm not going to give it all away here. But I think before we do any sort of resolutions or intentions or quitting, adding, blah, 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 let's look at what happened, what was felt, what was processed, what's still processing. Not to judge, just to be aware. And there's some really good prompts in here. So anyway, if you want to join that, I believe it's going to be on December 17th. And get in touch with me if you'd like the details to sign up. Otherwise, website, email, Instagram, all good options. And yes, I hope that something in here is resonating. I hope you have a great week wherever you are. I hope that it's getting lighter if it was feeling dark. Maybe I will leave you with a piece of homework. So perhaps you could find a quiet moment to yourself and close your eyes and take some breaths. And when you feel ready, when you feel relaxed, just ask yourself, what would living wild and free feel like for you? Okay, I will leave you with that. Until next time, buenas olas.